Original music for this podcast has been provided by Ashiko Music Group 1 at gmail.com. Ashiko Music Group 1 at gmail.com. Welcome to Your Expat Expert podcast, where we share ways to study, volunteer, work, or retire abroad. Embrace this journey because your new life is about to begin. This episode focuses on the dark side of travel that is often overlooked. So today on the show, we have Courtney, an anti-human traffic activist fighting against the global epidemic of human trafficking. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks for having me.
So, Courtney, for those who don't know, what is human trafficking?
Yeah, so human trafficking, there's a very broad kind of sense. It's an industry, actually, and it's when somebody is forced to perform labor. It doesn't have to be just sex trafficking. There's a forced labor side of trafficking. In Thailand, there's a lot of people that are trafficked on fishing boats, and so they will live out their lives on fishing boats, having to work, being forced to. They have to live there. So we have forced labor, and then we have sex trafficking and sex slavery, where people are forced to perform sexual acts for money, which they normally don't get to keep. And this kind of falls under the umbrella of what we call debt bondage. Mm-hmm. And so people will have someone, they will take them and they will say, you owe me this amount of money. You're going to work until you can pay it off. And then they essentially don't receive any of the funds, and they are just forced to work, really, unless they're rescued, or if they escape, they will be forced to work the rest of their life for their traffickers. Okay. So that's kind of what it is, and it's one of the most profitable industries that we have in the world. It generates over $150 billion of revenue every year, and with their product is essentially recyclable. So they have this product that's a person that they can use over and over and over again. They don't have to put much money into creating new products and stuff like that. So it's very dark and very evil. And over 70% of the people that are trafficked are women and girls. And so it's very mostly women and girls that are trafficked.
Okay. Well, thank you for explaining that there's different types of human trafficking, such as forced labor as well as sexual acts. With you living in Thailand, and when did you decide you wanted to make a difference?
Yeah, so actually the first time I came to Thailand, I was 14, and I came with my mom on a mission trip with my church. And we were actually reaching out to the Chinese, because a lot of Chinese tourists to Thailand. And we were in Pattaya, and I'm 14, I don't know anything. I didn't even really know what Thailand was. I was a very sheltered little girl, and we go to Pattaya, and we are on this pier handing out Bibles to the Chinese, and I was kind of by myself. I just went with my mom, and I think she was with somebody, so I was kind of by myself on this pier, and I saw a girl that was walking, and we made eye contact, and she looked like she had to be my age, or right around my age, so like 14 to 16, I would say is the age range that I thought she was. And she had an old man, probably like in his upper 60s, on her arm, and his shirt said, "Good guys go to heaven, bad guys go to Pattaya." Wow. And I read the shirt. I didn't really understand, and then she and I locked eyes, and she smiled at me, and that smile was the biggest cry for help that I had ever seen at that point in my life. And I just did not understand what was going on, or why she was with this man, or why it felt so evil. And I really felt like I heard the Lord's voice in the back of my head telling me, you're going to come back here one day and you're going to fight this injustice that is going on. And so really it was from that day that I knew I was going to come back to Thailand to fight this.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's touching, Courtney. So before we get into how we can help the cause, we're going to take a break. So we'll be back with Courtney, an anti-human traffic activist fighting against the global epidemic of human trafficking. Studied, volunteered, lived, or worked abroad? Share your international experience with us. We want to hear from you. Feel free to contact us at yourexpatexpert@gmail.com. We are back with Courtney, an anti-human traffic activist fighting against the global epidemic of human trafficking. Courtney, you mentioned what human trafficking is. You mentioned how much money is being made from this act. But for the individuals who are traveling around the world and they see these instances that are happening, can you explain some of the red flags and some of the signs?
Yeah. I think when you're out traveling, especially I think in Southeast Asia, prostitution is technically illegal, but it's not, nothing is done about it. And so it's very obvious. A lot of the times you will see women lining the streets in Thailand, a lot in Southeast Asia. And so it's sometimes hard to tell if they are self-prostituting or if they are trafficked. There's a really, really fine line. Some of the red flags, this I think is kind of more for victims that are trafficked that aren't so obvious about it. So like more, I think, younger girls, if they feel fearful or paranoid when you talk to them, like they kind of can't answer questions directly. If they have a person that they will direct questions to, so if you know, they don't like to speak alone with you, they need to have someone with them. And then someone, if they'll have injuries, like bruises, you can kind of see, if you can see the abuse on them. And then also a lot of the times they will not have ID. They will not have ID on them. Somebody will hold their ID. And so sometimes it's hard to notice these things kind of out when you're just on the street. Yeah. But you can, a way that I have noticed forced labor for kids. I was in Chiang Mai and there was a little boy singing at a market, and he was blind, and he was singing, and he said on his sign, it said money for school, and people were putting money in there. And I watched him take the box and walk over to this kind of like side and give it to a man who like took the money and gave him the box back. And so like that was just not a normal,
right?
It wasn't a normal interaction. And so when you're traveling, watching how they interact with people, if you see someone, maybe it's a young girl and she's dressed very inappropriately, maybe she has really expensive things on, but she's in not a great part of town, like that can be a sign that she has a trafficker that's buying her that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then watching how they interact with people, especially if they don't make eye contact, they really try to just avoid talking to people because they are 99% of the time scared, so scared. They don't trust anyone. They think everybody is working with the traffickers. You know, the traffickers normally tell them, I know where your family is, we'll kill your family. And so they are very in a shell, if that makes sense. And
they're definitely tricked into the system. It's not like they volunteered to do this. So they were told lies and...
Exactly. A lot of the times they'll be told, we have work for you in this city, you know, in Bangkok, wherever, we will get you, you know, get good money, send money home to your family, because that's more times than not, the reason that they agree to do it at all,
Right.
or agree to work with these people, is because they want to support their family. You know, that's very traditional or custom, I guess, in Asian culture, where you take care of your parents. And so a lot of them do it thinking that they are going to be helping their family, and then, and then they're tricked into this prison that they live in.
Right. And then certain large hotel chains, they kind of have this training for knowing the signs.
Yes.
But I was just curious, how can an individual help if they see this happening?
Yes. One, the knowledge and spreading awareness is really, really big. And there is an organization that I absolutely love. It's called A21, and it's put on by this woman named Christine Kane. She's a huge anti-human trafficking activist. She is just an incredible woman, and she started this organization, and they actually have a free online training that you can do, so you can recognize the signs and know kind of how to approach it, because these are victims of trauma. And a lot of times, if you just, and I'm not saying that any of us would just walk up to them and be like, hey, do you want out of this? But they are very, very scared. And so how you even deal with victims of human trafficking has to be just so precise, because they have gone through so much trauma. So I would highly recommend getting on A21, and then also talking with your local police station. When I was in college, I reached out to my friends, and I started a club at school for anti-human trafficking. And we reached out to our local police station, and they had a whole anti-human trafficking sector, part of their precinct. And so we got to learn about what is going on in our town. Where are the red lights? Where is this happening? And so you can learn a lot from your local police, especially in the States. I'm not so sure about out in Asia, but in the States you can talk to your local police, and they can help you attend trainings and seminars, and you really can learn. I feel like learning how to see it and knowing how to handle if it really is that kind of a situation.
Right. Well, we're definitely going to provide some resources in the description provided below on what you can do. So, Courtney, I wanted to thank you so much for sharing this information. It is definitely a side that we normally don't see when we're traveling, or at least it's not as obvious sometimes. So I wanted to thank you for sharing this information, as well as some instances, red flags, signs, etc. So thank you for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I think this is such an important thing to talk about, even though it is incredibly disturbing and uncomfortable and unsettling. But these people have no one. They have people fighting for them, but they don't have a voice, and we need to be that voice and be those arms to help save them.
So I thank you very much, Courtney.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you for listening. We hope this gives you some creative ideas on how you can study, volunteer, work, or retire abroad. Shout out to my sound editor, Martin, and Ashiko Music Group. Feel free to follow us through our social media channels listed in the description below. See you next time.